Hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning. Today is, or this time is my favorite time of the day. Yay. Time for my favorite time of the day. Painting. Painting time. Yay. Wednesday, June 24th at 9:54. So 10 a.m., a little bit later than I would have liked, but I was working on other things for teaching the painter's path actually on my website. I don't know why I don't want to mention it, but actually, soon I'm going to be releasing at least a few videos on my learning platform on my website, which is at chrisbevan.com right there. Yeah, if you have more questions about that, let me know. But today, we're going to be talking about this painting, and I changed up this view here so that we can see the image really large. And I'm actually, I removed my face from it so you don't see me as I'm talking. And I think that's fine. I mean, who wants to look at me anyways, right? We're going to do some problem solving. And I think that this is one thing that many artists need a lot of help with, because we can look at paintings and we can say things like, something's wrong with it. And I'm not sure. It just doesn't look right. There's kind of nebulous words that we use. We know something there isn't working for us, but we find it difficult to actually define that. Like, how do you define that? How do you find what's wrong with it? And I'm going to go through some practical ways to kind of help with that. Now, one thing I want to say about this painting is, I'm not going for an exact representation, a one-to-one copy of what we're looking at here. So, I don't need my painting to look exactly like the reference as far as like coloration or value in some cases. Like, I definitely want this value here to be lower than the value on the hands because that's my focal point. I definitely want the value on the nose, that lighter area on the nose, lower as well. And I want this to kind of like shine as my focal point beyond everything else because, I dumb down, or I use a lower value on this area where you can see on the reference it's a higher value. So I am making adjustments through this. And I think one of the best things that you can do is, number one, to determine where the problems are in a painting is do a side-by-side comparison like we're doing here. And there's a few things, right away that I see that I want to change. And the one thing you have to be careful of when you do this, when you put your painting side by side is, we could get into this nth degree on things where we're looking at all the little tiny details in here that is not that, and then compare it as in, is it a direct copy? And now if I was being, photorealistic in a lot of ways or hyper photorealistic, that would be, something I would definitely look at, but I'm not trying to do that. So I'm going to take that off the table. But it's easy, even as a representational artist that says I'm going to be, stepping away from that, to continually rate the entirety of my painting based on whether or not it actually looks exactly like that painting. The funny's funny. Thank you. You say pretty good painting. Nicely done. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it's not great. It's pretty good. It's got its issues. It's not done yet, obviously. I hate you. I don't know why I use that word. I hate that word obvious. Nothing's ever obvious, right? Anyway, but we want to stay away from, not stay away from, but at the very beginning of our painting process, and then I was talking about this yesterday, one of the most important things that you can do within your painting process is defining at the very beginning, before you even start the painting, exactly what this painting is about, where the focal point is, what you love about it, what you hate about it, how you can take that through the fundamentals of art, like value, drawing, edges, blah, 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 saturation, and then make adjustments to the painting that fit that narrative that you want at the very beginning. And that is really important because that will keep you kind of on the rails. and away from things where I could say, yeah, the value of this whole arm, relative to the value that's in this lighter area, I mean, it could be a lot darker, right? This whole shadow area. The face here could be a lot darker compared to the value on the nose. That light on the hair could be a lot lighter. That could be a lot darker. But I'm also compressing value ranges within this. Like this is my darkest dark, this background. I don't want to get any dark than that. Although I think I got too dark down in here. So I might want to lighten that up a bit because it does feel a little bit incongruent. It does kind of push things up to the top, give focus here, but I don't like that. Now, I'm not seeing a lot of drawing issues except for like right here where the hair is on the top of the head feels a little wonky. It doesn't feel right. And here we go in this nebulous language of it doesn't feel right. What does that mean? If I was to be very specific on that, I think that the highlights that are here, right at and maybe use a pencil or something, like these highlights right here probably need to come out a little bit, maybe darken up. Maybe I can blend those together so it gets lost a little bit, because there's these very close highlights on the image that you can see right here, but they're so close that they just turn into like several hairs. I could just compress that value range and get rid of it completely and probably help out that drawing a bit. Also, the forehead on the drawing goes a bit further up, like, it could go up in there somewhere. So I could change that to bring it back. And you're probably seeing issues with the painting that you don't like, different things, and that's always going to happen. I know having someone come into my painting, with fresh eyes that have never seen it before can look at it and go, oh, I don't like this, or I think you should change that, or I think it would look better in this aspect. And that's always good. I think getting external feedback, asking someone that hasn't seen it yet and looking at it in comparison with the reference, which is hard for us to do a lot of times because, we want to hide behind, this is our painting. And we don't want it to be like so beholden of this guy here that people look at it and go, yeah, it's not the same, right? Because that's the easy thing to do. So it's hard for us to ask other people in that way. But the problem solving starts here with this aspect of having the image itself or the painting itself right next to the image so you can kind of get back away from it and really see the differences in it within reason. This is where it starts. Facing the issues that a painting has. I was thinking about it this morning, and we have this tendency for a lot of our artwork to kind of run away from its problems. In a lot of cases when we're first starting out, or, even not first starting out, but if you've been painting for forever like me, sometimes I'll look at a painting and I feel something's incorrect with it, but I can't figure out what. I'll go through all the objective means that I know. I'll put it into Photoshop, do a direct comparison and overlay, and I'm like, I don't know what the difference is. And then maybe someone else can come in and let you know. But sometimes that happens. Like we can't figure out that difference. But a lot of times, especially beginning artists, artists that don't have a lot of paintings under their belt will go, it doesn't look right. I don't know why. And I just want to give up on it and just move away from it. I want to run away from my faults. And I think that could be, internally, one of the best things that we can ever do is go, yeah, this doesn't look great. It's not matching my idea of where I think it should go, but that's okay. I'm going to address that anyways, and at least try to move towards a resolution. I'm going to face my faults and then try and move forward. And I think that's important. That is probably super important. This painting has been a tremendous learning experience for me. Every painting is a learning experience, but this one, with the struggles that I had with the drawing, now, the struggles that I have right now of where it needs to go next and in all these different aspects. It's really good painting to help me improve as an artist. Every painting we do does that. But if we run away from its faults and its problems, if we decide not to face that, we're never going to learn it. We're never going to figure out what's going on and what we do, our tendencies for things. But as I look at this, the drawing I feel is pretty good. That's usually number one that we think about, drawing, especially with representational artists, especially with a hand and a face. I'm happy with the drawing. Is it absolutely perfect? No, it's not absolutely perfect. Doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. I mean, I could make that eye a little bit larger. I think the dark area in that eye could grow a bit more, probably be a bit better. And I may do that. Want to fix that hair a little bit. That didn't do it. I needed to just have some paint on my brush to fix that. So drawing is the very first thing that I'll look at. And we went through a bunch of drawing. The rest of the drawing is fine. The bigger areas, even though not defined within all of this fabric, I think the placement is fine. That's good. The next thing I'll look at is values. Now I am compressing my value range. It's why I have a value scale here. I'm not going all the way black, which is way down here. You can't even see it. I'm like up in here, this area, as far as the darkest dark. This area is getting a bit too dark. May want to lighten that up. I'm not sure. But value is the next thing. Drawing and value. I mean, if you think about it, if you think about like art in general, art itself, we could make a representational image with just charcoal that looks absolutely beautiful, right? Just black and white, no other colors. And if a painting or drawing or whatever we're doing can stand on its own with just black and white, without any color, without any brush strokes, without any edges, like differences in edges, without any of that kind of artistry or creativity within it, we can understand that it's like the foundation that the entirety of the painting house is built on. And so we always want to go back to those fundamentals, those foundations of drawing and value first to figure out problem solving. And then after that, we get into more nebulous ideas, more ideas of things that are a little bit harder to define, but we can look at because a lot of it takes on preference. A lot of it is about how we feel about it. What doesn't feel right? And usually what I go to on that is form. Now, form is a little bit different than drawing. It includes drawing in a lot of ways, but it's a bit different. For example, drawing, we think about, linear stuff, like the line that's created when we separate two fingers, or the line that's created in a contour when it ends in one space and then begins in another. That's another kind of drawing line, the contour. Form still deals with that, but it's more based in, our big thick brush, because when we're still drawing with a brush, but we draw in like a big shape, shape language, planes. It's also part of this in a lot of ways. So when I look down here at the shoulder and compare it to the shoulder over here, I think the abstract kind of contour of this is pretty close as far as drawing is concerned. But as far as the form, it's this amorphous blob. I don't know what that means. Just this kind of blobby thing here. It doesn't have like a good structure to it. And through form, through describing this form within like light and dark or shape, I think it'll be a lot better. And what I can do, I'm not going to show my palette for a moment. I'm going to do this as a comparison with the painting I'm working on, right on the painting. So I'm basically, you can kind of see on the side there, I'm mixing up this kind of warm color that's down here, which I'm way off right now. Going to take a bit to bring these back to get this color back that I mixed up there. And I get a lot of comments, or several comments from artists, and they ask me, how do you save your paint? I never save my paint. The only time I've ever saved my paint for multiple sessions is when maybe I have I think I was doing this really big painting that was monochromatic. And I just mixed up this huge batch. Oh, it was monochromatic, and I wanted a particular medium within it. Like I wanted a very particular kind of viscosity for that paint. And that was, things like that is the only time that I saved paint. It could be a lot more gray, honestly. It doesn't need to be that warm. Just trying it out, trying different things. And I think it's important to force ourselves to not try and save the paint, and to continually mix. And, the argument against that is, A, if you're working on a really big painting and it's just more efficient to do that, and B, if you're trying to save money. But I would still argue against that, as in, buy more, inexpensive paint, because Winsor Newton Winton, it's so close to professional brands. I don't see much difference in it. So is a little bit as far as like, pigment load. Yeah, it has higher pigment load, but you put them right next to the professional brands, and the majority of artists look at it and go, yeah, those are the same brand. There's no difference. It's just all about viscosity. But anyway, buy cheaper brands. But forcing yourself to remix and remix and remix is another iteration for you to begin learning, or even learn better, how to mix paint and get to the color you want quickly. I would say never try and save paint so that you can get away from mixing, more often, right? Don't do it because you don't feel like mixing your paint up. So what I'm doing here is this like kind of warmer tone. And this is drawing within form, where I'm looking at shadow shapes, where the light, and you can kind of see it on the reference. The light, like the half tone is here. It goes up in this area and like that, right? There's this shadow here that I kept very soft in a lot of ways because I'm doing that intentionally. But seeing that form and that plane change, and then painting it in a more structural way, is going to help out this shoulder. I think I could probably bring that down a bit right here. Like that lighter area can be brought down. It's going to help this shoulder look more like a structured thing rather than this kind of blob, right? So we went through drawing, we're looking at drawing, we looked at value, and now we're looking at form to tell differences and issues with our painting. This brush is starting to fall apart. Look at this brush. That's the only problem that I found with cheap brushes, like these really inexpensive brushes. Like they'll last for, 50, 60 paintings, but then eventually the brush hairs start coming out in them. And that's, whatever, not a big deal. It interrupts my painting a little bit, creates these little weird kind of, look at that, the tip of that brush is this little curly Q thing that's come out on it. Like, what is that? What are you doing there? What's happening, brush? But it adds some interest to that stroke. I don't mind it. I actually don't mind it. It's kind of cool. It's got like the little Clark Kent curl in its bangs. Okay, I pulled it out, so it's better. Yeah, I think this brush is only going to be lasting for a couple more paintings before the entirety of all of its bristles come out. But I think, every brush does that, right? I'm off onto so many tangents. The more you use a brush, the more you're going to wear it down. It's funny, like I have brushes that used to be so long, and then they get worn down the more you use them. Going back to drawing on this, because I'm looking at the angle of that shoulder there, and I think it needs to change a little bit. Okay. So that's one thing that I see as far as the form's concerned. And then let's get into something a little bit more nebulous. And that's this fabric area. Now, if you really squint down, if you really, squint your eyes down, you'll be able to see in the reference itself, like all these different value changes. Well, If you don't squint down, you see a tremendous amount of value change. You see all the folds, all the detail. But if you squint down, you'll begin to see that, like, right here, and I'm going to outline this. Starting here, going at this angle, you see I'm scraping into the paint. It's still a little bit dry, which is kind of fun doing this. There is, and that shape is a little bit different than what's actually there. That's like kind of an ambient light hitting those folds. There's one here as well. You know, this is the major one. That fold, and then this fold is actually non-existent right now. I need to put that one in. That goes up there. But you can see, right, this lightest value, even though there's all these folds within it, there's a lighter value hitting that whole area. It's the darkest here. The darkest part of this entire sleeve down here is right here within this shadow. Then that moves into kind of the fold of the arm, and everything's squeezed together. And then if you know light in general, I'm going to go to here so I can kind of display this. And we know that this is an arm, right? We know it's cylindrical. We know that it has that kind of form and that shape. And the more we talk about form, the more we want to be able to feel how things kind of come out to you, right? Like my hand here and how they move back into space. How a simple shape of an arm folds over, right? It has this circular kind of thing that happens to it. And for a lot of these things, like if I can demonstrate this on my own arm, let's go back here, see if I can do this. So here's my arm, right? You see that shadow underneath of it? And my camera's trying to figure out oh, that's perfect. I could probably even show you better if I do some reflected light. You see the reflected light? I know it's out of focus, but this is close enough. See that reflected light under my arm? And you can still see it when I take that paper away. But right, how can I point at it? Right here along the shadow, it goes down this way, is going to be that terminator. And as soon as I lighten it up, you see that terminator there? Where it's like, that's the darkest part of the shadow. Like it's the light part, then we get into the darkest part of the shadow, and then super light right there. Those terminators you'll find on every form. And once you know that, once you see that, and even though we're looking at, let me go here, even though we're looking at a form, a circular form that is, you know, kind of like this is back into space, this comes out, and then it goes back into space again, maybe slightly, there's going to be that terminator that's here. Right as it transitions into more reflected light, because down at the bottom there on their reference, it's all reflective light. It's very hard to see because it's all confused by all those folds and things. So it's difficult to see, but it's there. It's there, I swear. And you'll be able to see it. Once you know that, you'll be able to see it even on the smaller forms that happen, because not only is this bigger form, you know, traveling in space this way, right? But all these smaller forms of those folds are doing the same thing, because they'll catch light. They'll have the light area, then a bit of halftone, and then go into a terminator of the shadow. But once we see that, or once we know it intuitively of like how light behaves on an object, we can begin to see that in other places. This is why many people say that painting and drawing is not about painting and drawing, like actually putting the stuff onto your paper or your canvas. It's more about seeing where these things are and then putting it down. Okay, so that's all about form here. Will give me some idea of structure where I can go to on a larger scale, like how the entirety of that form functions, and then think about all these little tiny folds within that form as well, and how that functions in a smaller space. You can really see it if I lighten this up here. There's some reflected light right here on that shoulder. Let me bring the reference back up again. You see that reflected light? I mean, it's beautiful. There's so much information there. It's like, you get to a point where you're like, I'm not sure if I want to even show that. So what's happening is you have the shoulder that's light here, and then it's turning, and we get this shadow. This is all shadow area. It's not a very dark shadow. And then there's a fold there. Let me get a very close to white. This fold of the fabric here, that's here. It is reflecting light back onto that shoulder into the shadow shape. So you get this kind of dark thing and then light again, right? Hopefully you see that. So we have to be careful there though, because even though it looks really cool and it's like, oh, look at this really interesting part of light, it could also, if our values are way off there, if we make that reflected light too light, it can really mess with the form that's there, and it could flatten things out. So we got to be careful about how subtle those value changes are. So I'll show that a little bit of that reflected light. And I love how right against the fabric there, it gets dark again. So I want to make up a darker dark. It's a bit intense. And this will really separate that fabric from the body. These brushes used to be so sharp. Like I use a lot of flat brushes because, excuse me, I love how sharp the edges can get and how I could splay them out if I need to. But after working in water mixable oils, the water that's part of the water mixable oils that I was using, or to clean my brushes out with water, because it would dry in the brushes really quickly, make them too stiff. It splayed these brushes out a lot, and I didn't like that. It's one thing that I discovered about water mixable oils only after about 30 paintings or more. I'm going to gray this out a bit on that side. So I'm going to work on this shadow right now, thinking about the form, thinking about these edges. I wonder how much of this paper that I can bring back, because right here is almost all the way down to the paper. Almost. You can see I can get it even more white. But I need to be careful of that too, because I don't want it close to that finger value. I want it to have that transition, but I don't want it to compete with my focal point, which has the higher value, the highest value. And you can see how Doobie the Cat says it's slightly darker. Which is slightly darker? Like the lag time within that is difficult to deal with. But you can see when we're dealing with like problem solving with oil paint, how everything is just so connected. The nose up here is going to affect how things happen down here, right? When we're talking about the whole of your artwork, when you talk about the narrative in a lot of ways, you have this focal point way over here, but the nose could distract away from it. This area could distract away from your major focal point. You could pull all of that attention away from it. Oh, got another spammer on Twitch. That's the only thing I get on Twitch is people trying to spam things. Okay, so I don't want that as light. I do want to go more into like yellows. Warm, but like a yellow warm. The Terminator shadow really helped when I learned about that. Oh, great. Yeah, and you're right. It is. If you're talking about that Terminator there, it definitely needs to be darker. You're right. I could totally make that darker. I'll do that in a second, right after I deal with this highlight, the lightest light here. went too far with it. So subtle where I want to keep it, and I totally hit the camera tripod with my elbow. And the problem, see, for 90% of the painting, I never have this issue where intensity of paint is a problem. I get this question a lot. How do you clean out your brushes between mixtures? I don't. I don't. You don't need to. Very seldom, only in like just a few instances, will you ever have to clean out your brush between mixtures because you're going from like a very dark to a very light, or you want your black or your white or this color to be super clean. And maybe, I've seen painters where it's like, these big broad areas need to be super clean. And even then, no, I don't clean out my brushes. Why? Just use another brush. Get a different brush. It's faster and easier to do it that way. Because you can leave some of that color that you're working with in that brush. Never paint with just one brush throughout your whole painting. There's multiple problems within that. That's another problem-solving thing that you can have. If you look at your painting and you're like, man, I use the same brush throughout, for the most part, unless you know how to use that brush in like 20 or 30 different ways to make all these different marks, it's going to be very monotonous. You're going to be saying the same thing over and over again. It's going to be like a monotone voice where I'm speaking like this because it's like the same brush stroke. You can get away from that by using all kinds of different types of brushes, sizes of brushes, a splayed brush like this one versus a very sharp brush like other ones. But as far as, man, I hit that wrong. You saw that. As far as cleaning my brushes in between the session, in between like painting mixtures, I don't do it most of the time. Very seldom do I do that. Could be darker. Let's go real dark. And I find it's just faster because if I have, 3 or 4 brushes and I define them as, this is my shadow for this area and this is my background, which is a grayish, this is more a grayish dark color. And then this is the same value in the hair, but it's more warm. Using 2 different brushes for that, I can easily go back and forth, leave some of the paint in those brushes, and then get right back to that color pretty quickly and easily. Even if I've mixed up, a different color on my palette, I have in my brush what I want. So yeah, multiple brushes through that. And maybe the complaint on that would be, well, it costs too much to get multiple brushes. No, you can, so many inexpensive brushes out there that work just fine. Like these, you can't get anymore. These are Art Smith brushes that were from Joann Fabric. I bought like sets of 50 for like $10. So like a few cents a brush. And then on Amazon recently, I got these Nick Pro brushes as a set for like, I don't know. It was very cheap, maybe a few cents per brush, maybe $1 per brush. I don't know, different sizes. And my most expensive brushes are these not Windsor. These are Rosemary and Company. They come from the UK. Various sets of brushes like that I get inexpensively. Some are on sale, some are giving away brushes, They can be very cheap and do you just well. A lot of the brushes I have a few brushes in here that are very important. Like this is a hog's hair bristle cheap brush that I've had. Look at all that cat hair on the tip of it. It's crazy. That I've had for years and years, and it's worn down to nothing and splayed like crazy, but it works perfectly for certain situations. Keeping those old brushes are important. I used to work like solely within these Monarch brushes by Winsor & Newton for very detailed work. I still have those. I mean, those are 20 or 10 years old now, those brushes. all of them are splayed out, but they're perfect for if I need to really soften an edge. Yeah, that's a bit darker. Okay, I'm going to remove that. It's getting to a point when I keep looking back and forth that it's distracting. I'm not making a copy of a photo here. I'm making a painting. In some instances, some cases, like I got my reference off to the side here on my iPad that you can't see, but in some times I'll get to a point on a painting where I don't want any more influence from the reference, and I'll turn off my iPad and I'll work on it as a painting. Like, and a lot of time in those instances, we're looking for this idea of like, hey, I'm making a painting, not a copy of a photo. It's important to me that the paint itself looks good on the canvas. Now I want to keep that as my very clean light brush, but I want to make up a gray that goes a little bit into this yellow ochre in a very light gray, because all of these folds here, like there's color grouping that I'm using. And I'm doing this because I've worked on this same photo series by Satine Zilla for multiple paintings. Background is like just ivory, black, and white, just gray. Everything with the figure adds in both, all four of my colors, but it's on the warmer side. Like the hair is closer to like umbers, like a burnt umber, raw umber. Then a bit more red and ivory black within the skin tones, except for this one here. The shoulder gets a bit more closer to the yellow. And then the fabric is nothing but ivory black, yellow ochre, and white. Like just staying within those and separating those things out help us understand, like at least a viewer to understand, these are separate objects, This is not the skin or the hair or the background. This is a completely separate thing. And we can use those subtle coloration differences to help us like define structural changes within our paintings. And you can see that when I'm working here, I'm getting a little bit more detailed. I'm thinking about the structure of these folds. I'm thinking about how they kind of move through space, and then also in like a bigger way, like the bigger ideas of these folds. I'm not going to get in here and do, all the variations of light and shadow on every single fold, but I do want them to describe the aspect of the sleeve and the multiple folds that are there without being distracting away from my focal point. And this is where problem solving gets into these really difficult ideas to describe, because you're talking about detail, but in a very simple way. Like the broader idea of detail, kind of very similar to where we're talking about this being an arm under fabric, and in and itself, that entirety has a very dark side, a light side, then a terminator and reflected light. But then also all those folds that pass through it has all of those aspects of light within it. We're focusing on that bigger shape and going to ignore all of those value changes that happen within those folds, and think more about the bigger idea of that arm underneath a bunch of folds, if that makes sense. And that can happen in a lot of ways. Like there's so much transition happening in this hand where you see veins and the difference between knuckle and value changes, coloration, saturation changes, but we think more about the whole, especially when we get further away from that. This can darken out into nothing, which I'll probably do. Hey, Matthew, glad you're here watching while working. Good, good, good. Hopefully I don't distract you from your work too much. Yeah. So this is where I think painting itself kind of gets into a different level. And I love this level of painting where we're thinking about the simplicity and like describing complexity with simplicity. You look at, 18th century American landscape painters like Thomas Cole, probably one of the most famous. He did figure and landscape. But back then, it was more about describing the exactness of nature in a lot of those paintings. Even Albert Bierstadt. Bierstadt is, amazing, absolutely amazing. Like capturing all in a landscape. If you don't know Bierstadt, please look him up. I know where the mute button is. Oh, good. That's good. Oh, fantastic. And then, where the double, speed up button is when you're watching one of my videos, you're like, oh my God, Chris, get to the point. Totally. But with artists back then, Albert Bierstadt, Thomas Cole, and a bunch of others, it was more about the exactness of the landscape. So they're looking at these trees, like massive trees, and they're doing every single leaf, like the exactness of it. There's nothing wrong with that. The paintings are, amazing. They're in freaking museums, right? And people, revel on those paintings. It's fantastic. And if you love that, do that. So it is just a different way of painting. There's no wrong way of painting, but I like this idea of taking painting to a different level where it asks, okay, I see that there's all those leaves there, but I'm lazy and I don't want to do all those leaves. No, that's part of it for me at least. But it's more like, how can I describe those leaves in more of a larger form, more of a bigger idea of the entirety of those leaves and what they kind of make together, that will still say tree. It'll still say, hey, this is a tree that looks like this, but simple complexity. Our complexity described simply. And I think that is so much fun, finding where that resides. And you could look at John Singer Sargent, Sorolla. You could look at Alex Kanevsky, Ben Hope, Anne Gale, Olga Bosnanska, Jędrzej Molzewski, all these amazing artists that do this is absolutely wonderful, right? The Impressionist. Go to Monet, right? Monet will do it for you. But Van Gogh will do it for you. It's less about, and I guess, I could describe it in word, the impression of it more than the exactness of it. You can look at Whistler as well. Whistler's fantastic for this idea. I love Whistler and how you like really pushing the envelope of what could happen within painting. Probably one of the very first artists of that time to get ridiculed for making paintings that was more paint than it was object. Finding that boundary of possible abstraction, trying to see what we can get away from, get away with, without having to do every single bit of detail. And that is difficult to problem solve. And the reason why any of this is difficult to problem solve is because it gets so much further into to subjectivity rather than objectivity. It's easier to look at a painting and say, that looks exactly like the photo, or it looks exactly like the figure that you're painting that's in front of you. And it has everything that photo or that figure or that whatever subject matter is. And it's just comparison, which is still, I say just, it's still hard. It's not easy to do that. But it's easier in a conceptual way where you don't have to conceive of differences that are not objective. When you move into the subjective world of art, we move away from that kind of objective, oh, it looks exactly like a picture kind of thing. Yeah, if I get too distracting, totally. Focus on whatever you're doing first. Super important. Don't worry about me because I'm focusing, even though I'm talking my head off, right? So I'm looking at the small structure within how this shoulder changes. There's a highlight there that transitions into maybe the front of the deltoid. I think it's like the top of maybe the acromion process or the scapula there. I don't know. I'm just trying to show off with all of these words that mean anatomy, right? And side note here on anatomy, it does help. If you're an artist that works from imagination, I think anatomy is 100% necessary. I think that gives you such a deeper understanding of the body where you can work from imagination a lot more successfully. But if you're an artist that, like myself, that works from photos, I don't think anatomy is that necessary, honestly. I do think it helps. I did a course I think it was on New Masters Academy. It was Ray Bustos, Bustos. Cool guy. And I think he's got a class now on Proko.com where he goes through anatomy. And I would totally take that again. But he did it was on a chalkboard when he did it. And it was fantastic because he would go through all of the artistic anatomy that we need, not into deep tissue anatomy, which we don't need, all the stuff that we would see as artists, right? That was important to us. And it was all the words and everything that he was saying really fit well with my brain. Let's just say it that way. Especially when he would do all these overlays on, okay, this is how this muscle is here. Then we go a little bit deeper on this one. And the logical progression through anatomy was really helpful. So if you are interested in anatomy, I would suggest his class. It's fantastic. But the problem with anatomy and the problem with when we get into defining the body in this kind of rigid way, still onto a tangent here, is it never matches with our reality. It will never. You ever see people that say, okay, the eyes are one eye width apart and, it's 3 eyes from the nose down to the chin or whatever. They define this specific width and height for the human face. And it's like, oh, great, let me make notes on this. And you think this is going to help you with painting or drawing the human figure. And then eventually you actually look at a person and their head is facing down. And you're like, oh, none of those measurements work in this scenario whatsoever. So, the canon of proportions, that they call it, never rely upon that. But if you look at general ideas of anatomy, generalistic ideas, I think that's helpful because it allows you to be able to understand what you're looking at in some instances. Especially when you look at a back, the back of a figure, there's just nothing but bumps and everything everywhere. And you're like, what the heck is going on here? But you know a little bit about anatomy and you go, oh, those are the erectus femoris, or no, that's in the femur. The muscles on the side of the spine, and that's the spine there, and there's the scapula where it begins, and then the arm is way up, and I can see how the scapula kind of bends out, but it's hidden in the most place. And there's the triangle of auscultation, which is probably my most favorite thing on the back. All of this stuff. I can't even, I don't even know. It's crazy that I remember that. The triangle of auscultation. That was an interesting thing because it's a space on the back in between like the lat muscles, the trapezius muscles, and I think the shoulder that makes a triangle. And it's where none of the muscles overlap. And it's what they would use back in the day to be able to hear like the internals of the body, like your lungs or something like that, because there is no muscle obstructing that triangle. So auscultation, I think, has something to do. It means, listening or something like that. The triangle of auscultation. That was kind of fun. Learned that from Ray Bustos. Anyway, so as you can see, I'm down here, and you can see. Let's go back to the bigger image. See how that's a lot more structural than everything else. Like I'm starting to feel what's going on there. I love looking at it in a digital sense because right away it's telling me, okay, it's still a bit flat. Maybe lighten this up here, darken it back there a little bit more, push that back by darkening it up, lighten this up, bring it forward, lighten it up here, and then darken it up a little bit there. Like I know it's reflected light and it looks really bright over there, but we have to remove ourselves away from photos in a lot of ways. We can't paint directly from photos all the time because there's this interesting thing that happens within photography where we look at a photo, everybody looks at a photo and they go, oh, it looks fine. It's a photo. Yeah, we know it's a photo right away. And even if it's something strange in that photo, if you painted that, it would look great in the photo, but you painted it and it looks weird. It's like, what is that? I have no idea what you're doing. The example that I always bring up on that, I put some red in there, and I don't want red in there. It's going to be warmish yellow. Me and a friend of mine years and years ago, this is 20 plus years ago, we were doing landscape painting. And we were tired of walking forever to find a good landscape painting. We just got tired of it. If you ever paint, like urban sketching or whatever, you know what I'm talking about, where you're looking for that perfect subject that will make a beautiful painting right away. And sometimes what that leads to is like an hour or 2 hours of walking around and, no painting whatsoever. So we were fed up with that. So we just stepped outside his apartment into the parking lot, this big parking lot of a big apartment complex, right? There was cars everywhere. We just sat down and said, I'm going to paint what's in front of me. Screw it. Let's just do this. Let's stop, thinking about making a good painting and just paint. It was a lot of fun doing that until we got to the stop sign. Now, normally when you think about a stop sign, you think this big red thing, this big red octagonal shape on the end of a stick that says stop. But if you turn that 90 degrees, that stop sign, hey Slipknot, what's up? 34 degrees. Oh gosh, it's hot there. Yeah, it's like 100 here. So not humid though. So if you take that stop sign and you turn it 90 degrees, it just turns into a stick, right? And with very subtle transitions between the sign itself and the pole that it's on. And that's what we were looking at. We were looking at the stop sign on its side, and it just looked like this big black stick in the middle of our painting. And if you painted it exactly the way it was, that's what it'd be like. And when we looked at our paintings, it was like, what is that? Like, it's so strange. It's just the weirdest thing. But if I took a photo of it and showed the person a photo, they'd be like, oh, it's a stop sign. And it was like the very first indication for me where I knew that, hey, photos say a lot more in such subtle ways. And the fact that we know that they're a photo that we kind of take for granted that, hey, it's exactly what it is. Now generated stuff comes in and is really questioning that, but I won't get into that crap. But it was this perfect example where I said, oh, we need to start moving away from this like kind of photo idea of painting, because a lot of times it just doesn't work. Even if I got super photorealistic on that um, stop sign in the middle of our landscape painting, it would still be bad. It would be like, oh, why did you paint that stop sign? This is this big black pole in the middle of your painting. It's made a better painting to just ignore it, to just not paint it at all. And this is what we're doing in a lot of ways here. We're looking at our photo, this big photo. Let me bring it back up. And I'm looking at all this detail. I'm getting a little too detailed right there, right? I could probably lighten up the image that we're looking at. Give me a second. Yeah, that's a bit closer to what I'm seeing. So looking at what's there and making this determination of, am I going to keep it or not? Am I going to think about the bigger idea of those folds in a very general area where we're thinking about detail simply done, right? Which is so hard to nail down, especially when we're problem solving. Does it say folds enough where the viewer can look at it and go, yeah, that's a bunch of folds, but not so much that it takes up all of the attention of the entire painting. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do down here at the bottom. And we take this all the way back to the beginning. The very first thing, in order to know how detailed I need to get down here, it's because I defined at the very beginning of the painting, what is the focal point, what I love most about this painting, and the purpose of everything else surrounding it. And the purpose of these folds down here are not to be distracting, but to support my focal point here, to be there, to be an interesting thing that my viewers can kind of look at, flow into, right? After they were wowed by this amazingly bright and saturated area, and then go down here and go, wow, look at that interesting brushwork down there. I saw that as folds generally, but as I look at it, it looks just so simply done and beautiful, and that's what I want to do. But you got to have that initial definition first. You have to have an understanding of where your painting's going or where you want it to go at first. Like, this is the important part. This is the least important part. How can I move that through the fundamentals of art, through value, saturation, drawing, edges, etc., to make that happen? It's no different than if you had a poem that you were painting from. And you're like, poem? How can you paint from a poem? No, you can only paint from images, Chris. Well, I mean, think about like comic book artists, right? They're given a script. Or in movies where we start out with a screenplay, right? And the people doing the like mock-ups for each scene, they're thinking about, oh, how can I visually represent what's happening here? And that's a lot of fun. You know, like if the scene or the poem is talking about, or the movie or your feelings are talking about like a cold winter's night, you're not going to, paint something with a lot of oranges and yellows and reds in it. No, that's going to feel warm and cozy. There's going to be a lot of blues and darks and things like that, right? Yeah. So when you define your focal area, not just like specifically like, oh, I just like, and this is specific. I like the value. I like the saturation. I like the colors in there as my focal point, as kind of taking over everything. That's specific visually. But if I said, you know what, I like the quietness of this. I like how quiet it feels. Or, you know, I remember doing a painting where I was painting from the music video of, what do they call it? Teen Spirit by Nirvana. Love that music video. And so I paused it and I was painting from it. And I wanted to keep that energy, that it was loud, it was interactive, it was energetic, you know, it was also super warm. And I wanted to keep those ideas within the painting. So that gave me an idea of like, well, I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of high contrast, a lot of sharp edges, a lot of movement within the brushwork. All of this stuff was saying energized, energetic, movement, craziness, loud, those kind of things. So we define in this, you know, in whatever way we feel that the painting, part of the painting that we love, or why we love it, our initial image at least. Okay, I need to certain brushes. Here's another tangent for you. Using a dry brush here by, this is Rosemary and Company. You know what would be better? Would be a bright. Bright brushes are brushes that have very short bristles. I want a smaller bright. So you have flat brushes that have long bristles and they're flat on the top. This is a bright one because it's short. The great thing about bright brushes, not sure why they call them bright. Maybe because they can make very bright lines when you scrape into it. But they kind of turn into a chisel. They're very hard. And if you use them in a dry way, like I don't have any paint on here whatsoever, they're great for chiseling out paint off of the surface, like really kind of pulling stuff off or putting it on in a very sharp way. So I'm not making light paint strokes here. What I'm doing is pulling paint off of the painting to lighten up these values and let that white show through. I love doing this in the lighter areas because it gives a glow to the paint that you just can't get by adding white to it. And in between, every time I touch the canvas with this brush, I'm wiping off any paint that I pulled up into the brush onto my napkin as well. Thinking about drawing here, thinking about edges, thinking about, drawing edges, value within these. And then also thinking about how does that affect my focal point? Is it distract a little bit too much away from that? Yeah, in some instances. Thinking about the form, the larger form of the arm that is underneath all these folds and trying to indicate that this here, you know, we had defined that earlier, this kind of light stripe that goes all the way down here. Trying to pull paint off. Oof, that's too light. Trying to describe how this area is catching a bit more light. It's a bit more forward, and then everything else kind of falls back. The bigger shapes here, exactly what I was talking about before, where it's describing detail in a larger way, in a less specific way. Just enough to give the viewer the idea we want them to get, and that's it. And I'm also thinking about, does the paint look cool as well? I mean, that's a big part of this. I think it's something that we don't think about as artists, where the paint itself can look well placed and interesting on your canvas, where it's like, wow, that's just an interesting brushstroke in itself. You know, the minutia of just paint on the canvas, because we tend to want to forget about that, hey, this is That's all it is paint on the canvas. And especially when we're representational artists like myself, where we start out being very specific with everything and we're trying to make what we're painting look like the subject matter that we're painting from. Okay. And like that's our beginning sole purpose with painting is just making it look like what we're looking at. When we begin to kind of move away from that and get into more ideas where we're simply describing things, it's very difficult because we're like, whoa, I need to do this simply. Keep adding red to that. I don't know why. It needs to be just yellow. And I love this play between like when we look at something and our brains kind of flow between exactness and inexactness. That really needs to be a lot lighter in that, because I talked about that before when I was going over what I need to fix on this painting. And this whole shadow shape is too dark. It's darker than my darkest darks, and I've compressed the value range within this. And the problem I'm having is there's too much variation between the value in this sleeve, these folds here, and that. And I keep wanting to make these folds darker when I can just make that neck area lighter and bring it back to the compressed value range that I had initially anyways. So let's find the value range we want. I think that's a bit too light. And again, thinking about my separation of hues throughout this painting, where, yeah, that's better. That's better. A little bit more red. The background is just black and white, ivory black and white. The figure themselves is ivory black, more red, a little bit of yellow ochre, and white as well. So all four colors, but it leans towards a more reddish, warm color. That's where the figure is. And these folds are more of a yellow warmth. So more yellow ochre in those mixtures than anything. And another reason why I really like, well, there's several reasons why I compress value ranges. One reason is kind of stupid, but it works out well, is if I do straight black on any canvas that I've ever painted, by the time that it's ready for varnish, and even like weeks after varnish, it has so much cat hair and dust all over it that it's so distracting and it just looks terrible. And you're like, wow, what a dumb reason to compress your value range. Right. But that's one thing that helps out, you know. Another reason why I compress value ranges and I don't go all the way black, and it's specific with black, honestly. I have so many problems with just black right on the canvas, like the super dark value. When we get that dark with that value range, sometimes I get a lot of glare that I have to deal with on my painting while I'm painting, which is, you know, if you're an oil painter, you know what I'm talking about, you know. And a lot of paintings, when you paint dark, very dark, you know, you're dodging back and forth with your head to try and get away from the glare because you can't understand where the value range is because that glare is so bright, and it's really annoying. The one thing with the painter's path that I can't wait to get into is talking about how to set up your studio so that while you paint, you have zero glare whatsoever. Now, you're not seeing any glare on my painting right now because I have a dual polarization set up with my lights and my camera. So you're not going to see the glare. Just very subtle there. I got rid of a whole fold there because I think it's enough think I have enough there. And I'm just barely touching the canvas with a lot of these brush strokes. Glad I'm not the only one dealing cat hair and dust. Yeah. It's a big issue. I was just talking with a friend of mine, and she's doing, the painting's mostly black, or black everywhere. Black, 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 straight out of the tube. And it's like, you're just so distracted away from the painting because of all the dust on it. And it's more dust than cat hair for her. I mean, she doesn't have a cat. She's got a puppy, but she doesn't have as much problem with hair as we do with the 2 cats. And I'm not getting rid of my cats. I'll stop painting before I get rid of my cats. Yeah. Which if you know me, like being a daily artist, and I didn't even mention, today is day 4,898. I'm getting close to 5,000 days in a row, guys. Crazy cool. I'm going to have to celebrate. I have to do some kind of celebration. I know. I'll do a painting. That'll be my celebration, right? This is looking really good. I need to kind of back away. Let's look. That looks good. This here is too distracting. You see all those like kind of, I was at the back of my brush describing things and marking on the canvas. So that's a bit too distracting, but this is looking really good. All this here. And I think I don't need almost anything there. I can bring this value I'm going to try to bring that value way down. The further I get away from the center area, the less saturation, the more gray, the less contrast, no hard edges, all these things that we can kind of put on a spectrum to adjust what is most important, what captures the eye of your viewer more often. You see, here's the problem with paper. You're probably seeing this. Like I'm moving it as I'm doing it. But that's the same with canvas. Canvas moves when you paint on it. That's the reason why I don't like painting on canvas. Ugh. And that bouncy is really annoying right now. But it's okay. I'll deal with it. Because this isn't like super detailed down here. I'm going to focus on the bigger shape down here first. Where the top of the arm is all the way down to here, and the forearm folds up, and all those folds are telling me that. Like, we know that as humans. Like, we don't have to get deep into defining that. We know that that is a forearm coming up, and it's got a bunch of fabric wrapped around it, and it's going over the top of the arm. It's like so much information there. But how can I just say arms and fabric simply and easily? So that is all that the viewer needs to see. It's like information and peripheral vision, where we know that there's cars around us when we're driving. We know that that car maybe to our right, that's a little bit behind our vision, right in the peripheral of our vision, is, like a darker red color, and the one to the left is a light color. We know those cars are there. But they're not right in front of us. They're, it's in the background of our head. We understand where they're at, but we don't need to know what the license plate is on it, right? We don't need to know what the person looks like that's driving it. All we need to know is that that car is there and that we shouldn't merge into it. It's a weird stream. This guy's talking about cars and driving while he's painting. What's going on here? Yeah, that's the idea that I'm kind of grabbing down here, which is more like this is a peripheral vision thing. It's not important. We get so carried away And I've done that in so many paintings where I get carried away with describing everything that's there because I see it in the photo. I see the license plate. Let's get out, the rigger brush and start um, doing text that's on that license plate. Do we care? No, we don't care. We just don't want to merge into that car. We care about where it's at as far as like our safety, and that's it. Our focus is right here in the hand. That's where we're at. Always think about that. And that's part of probably the biggest part that I've repeated over and over again when talking about problem solving and painting. Like when I'm talking to artists, students, and looking at their drawing or their painting, and they're saying, yeah, there's something wrong with it, but I don't know what, I need some help on this to figure this out. Usually the first question I ask is like, okay, what's the purpose of your painting? What are you trying to say with it? What is the most important thing? And, sometimes I'll get, I don't know, it just needs to look like the photo. And that's fine too. I'm like, okay, good. All right. If you're going for photorealism, you just want it to look exactly like the photo, no problem. I can pick out all the issues with, it not looking like what you're painting. But if they said something, I want this feeling of cold, damp, sad quietness, in my painting. But for some reason, it's just not working. I don't feel that. It feels a bit too energetic, a bit too whatever. That's awesome too. Then we can look at things in a more subjective way and be able to understand, how to change our painting up based on, those aspects. But we have to know this first. We have to kind of come into the painting or before everyone start the painting and define that. Like, this is what I want to achieve, and this is a narrative I want to say within this painting. And not so much narrative as in, that's a milestone for sure. Thank you. And not so much narrative as in, I want to speak the words of things, right? Not like this is always a story. We're not doing N.C. Wyeth, right? Where it's, although absolutely gorgeous paintings, but we don't need to describe the death of Robin Hood perfectly. And that's not exactly what we're doing. But it could be, I just want it more quiet. I want this room to be cooler. I'm going to turn on my fan. Give me a second. Yeah. What did you say? 34 degrees Celsius where you're at? My goodness. I think for those that don't know, the conversion from Fahrenheit to Celsius is terrible. It's awful conversion. Multiply by 0.0923, or some craziness like that. 34 degrees Celsius is around 100 degrees Fahrenheit, I think. Somewhere around there. I know it's hot. Anything over 32, I'm like, ugh, it's gross. Here it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit today, but not humid. It's never humid here in the desert. So that's good. The great thing about that is when we go out into the shade, it actually makes a difference. When I was living in Hawaii, the shade did not make a difference. Not at all. It just, you woke up hot. It stayed hot. Hot everywhere. Did not like the weather in Hawaii. Sorry. I don't do well in hot, humid environments. I'm one of those weird people that likes the Pacific Northwest. Cold, gray, rainy. That's me. I can survive in that forever and just enjoy life. Be a little hermit in a cave. That's me. Painting my paintings, talking on a stream, making videos, talking to myself when you're even not here. Yep, that happens. He's a bit crazy. A bit crazy. How long have I been working? Hour and 35 minutes. Made some real progress on this, honestly. Yeah. I keep going back. I keep going back to this. I love looking at it digitally to get away from it. Another part of problem solving. Look at your painting comparatively with a digital image, like on your phone or something. You know, there's you can flip things, and I can do it on well, I'm not going to do it right now, but you can flip things horizontally, like backward or upside down or whatever, and it gives you a better understanding of what you're seeing to kind of get away from your painting. And that works too in some ways, but I've always felt that taking a digital photo on your camera of your painting or of my painting and looking at it that way has always been like I'm able to remove myself away from the painting, kind of look at it with new eyes quickly and easily that way. Uh, that is great for problem solving because you're like, it feels weird. I don't know what's going on with it. And then as soon as you see a digital photo of it, you're like, oh, drawing issue, value issue, form issue, all those things that we were talking about. And sometimes problem solving will never come to you. Like you won't figure out what's going on with that painting. You've done everything you could and you're like, okay, I just can't figure this out. And it's fine to like put a painting down, right? And start on a new one. Leave it somewhere in your studio. That way it's there, it's in the back of your head, right? You see it every now and then. Let your subconscious work on it. And then one day you like come back to it, they'll go, oh man, that's it right there. That's what I need to change. And then boop, 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 just a few brushstrokes and you're done. And the painting went from, a disgraceful thing that you just wanted to shun and get away from. But then 3 or 4 brushstrokes later, you're like, that did it. It's my best painting ever. I'm trying to right here get this value darker. And okay, and the whole bouncy is really annoying the crap out of me now. I'm going to take this piece of tape down here and put it right at the corner. Usually when a lot of these paintings that I work on paper, I'll have like a 1/2 inch border around so I can tape everything down. But the size of the pad that I'm working with, I can get 2 6x9s out of it perfectly at 6x9. But I can't get that extra border around it to tape it down. So I got tape on the back of the painting, and then that helps. And I guess I could do double-sided tape around 4 corners on the back and do it that way too. So maybe next time. And I love how this little bit of fabric right here, that value needs to be right on. How it definitely begins to turn around to the back of that arm right there. If I can get that right, I think it will just say so much right there. I need to darken up this value on the arm itself. Like there's these little subtle moments within, you know, life that we're looking at that says so much. And whenever you happen upon those and you recognize that and then you paint it well, man, those are the parts of the painting that even like around here on, further away from the focal point, that really can support the rest of the painting tremendously. Little small moments saying so much about the entirety of the painting. Don't disregard them because they can do that. It's all about seeing it. I was talking about before that, that you'll hear this from a lot of artists. It's not about putting it down in the right place. It's not about the materials. It's all about seeing, learning to see. Because if you can see where the problems are, if you can see the subtlety, if you can see where the drawing is, where you can see the exactness of the distances between the nose and the mouth, and draw it, put the drawing down correctly the first time, that's where artistry comes in. That's where you're like, okay, I've moved into this kind of next phase of painting, next phase of my artistic journey, because I can see so much more. And the only way to get there is to do a lot of painting and a lot of drawing, and talk with people about your paintings and drawings, because a lot of them will help you see your, if you can get into mentorships from artists that you admire and have them look at your artwork, and they'll see things that you won't see, that you're like, whoa, I didn't even notice that. But then after you see it, you can't unsee it. Like, it's there. Like we do with some things that we want to unsee, right? Like, oh, I can't get that out of my head now. And I know we've all experienced that. We, happen upon this stupid video or something on the internet, or stupid image, and then you're like, oh, I can't unsee that. It has burned its way into my brain. And yeah, I'll probably have nightmares about it. Right. But in artwork, it's the same way, but in like very positive ways. You start understanding, like, was it Slipknot or someone on here? I apologize. That said, as soon as they understood the Terminator, you look at illustrators now, you look at N.C. Wyeth and Rockwell and all those golden age illustrators. And as soon as you understand like the Terminator that happens within the aspects of light, every one of their paintings you'll look at, you'll go, look at that. They're using it like crazy everywhere. And it had always been there. You've looked at their paintings for years. You've always looked at their paintings, but now that you see that, you understand it. Now you see it everywhere. It's about seeing and understanding. What I'm doing right now on this painting, darkening up this bottom part of the forearm here. Very light brush, very dry brush, not a lot of paint on this brush. And I want to wrap that little bit of fabric around to the back of that arm. And I think this little indication here is probably the most important moment within this piece of fabric and how it interacts with this forearm. And when we find these little parts that we feel, we could be completely off. I could be completely wrong on this, but when we look at it, we go, this is what describes the most important part of this part of the painting. This little small area, we just put that in. If we see that and we put just that in, that's all we need. That is simplicity. That is complexity described simply within our painting. Got to find those areas, got to see those areas. And I think that's where this is. I think that's this fold back here is the most important. And I don't have to go in here with a ton of detail. I don't have to think of it in a detailed way, but in a general way, bigger shapes, and it'll do its thing. And the viewer will do their thing too. Like always respecting our viewers too, because if we're sitting here describing everything in the most exact way, it's almost like, well, I mean, we're choosing to do that, and it's good in a lot of paintings. I always roll back on that because I tend to want to denigrate hyper photorealism or photorealism, but there's a lot of it I look at and I freaking love. It's gorgeous, right? There's so much skill in that. It's not for me, so I tend to talk negatively about it. So I always want to shore it up with, hey, it's okay if you like that. This is my opinion. But we tend to not trust the viewer to understand what's happening. Like we feel like, oh, I need to describe this very specifically, everything very specifically, in order for the viewer to get it, to understand that this is a piece of fabric wrapping around this arm. But when in reality, and we've seen in other artists, like master artists, right, that have described something similar so simply, so elegantly, masterfully, and it says everything that it needs to say. And then there's artists that are like, I like the idea of describing everything specifically. That's cool too. Go for it. Because I really don't think I could never say this art form is better than that art form. I don't know. What do you guys think? Anybody on here right now that has a very strong opinion, let's say, about abstract expressionists, Jackson Pollock. I mean, he's kind of like the go-to that people know to hate, right? Where it's about just throwing paint everywhere. The expression of it, the movement of it. Beautiful paintings. Or Mark Rothko, right? Another, I don't know if he would be considered abstract expressionist or not. I think maybe, but definitely abstract. Do you have strong feelings about those artists? Do you go into a gallery or museum and you look at some of the paintings and you say, my 4-year-old could have done that? Like the comment that you hear from a lot of people that, that just, and with lack of better word, oh, geez, no, I don't want that paint there. Lack of a better word, but there's ignorance there, And I remember saying that on a lot of paintings. I'm like, come on, what is this? There was no hard work put into that. How can I respect this if they haven't put hard work into it? But then there's some pieces. We got married in Rothko Chapel. Oh, crap. That's awesome. Not my favorite, but I get it. That's what I hear from a lot of people. I would love to go to was the chapel? Was that with the big dark paintings up everywhere? Is that the chapel you're talking about? Because I would love to see that. Oh, I've heard people kind of breaking down emotionally in front of those paintings, just, having emotional experiences from Rothko paintings. But yeah, I've seen a few Rothko in person. Haven't liked most of the ones that I've seen in person. They're a bit too bright, but I want to see those darker ones. In Houston, yes. Oh, it's in Houston? Holy crap, I'm not too far from Houston. Well, I'm far from Houston. Okay. I need to go to Houston. I have to write that down. Put it on bucket list. But yeah, I think there is a tendency for a lot of, I keep wanting to say ignorance. Ignorance as in, not a person being stupid in any way. That's a different word. Ignorance as in I'm ignorant about math. I suck at math and I'm fine with that ignorance. I don't want to get better at math. I don't want to work on it. I hate it. I hate math. I don't want to do my times tables. I'm sorry. Right. But I love being ignorant in a lot of things and then, you know, have that moment of realization and understanding. So I'm ignorant about a lot of things, you know, just not knowing. So there's been many abstract works, many contemporary works of art where at first I'm like looking at it going, this is terrible. You know, there's not any work put in here, but it had something to it. You know, every now and then you run across these paintings where, yeah, there was not a lot of work put into it, but they'll have a feeling in them where it kind of draws you in and you're like, uh, that's interesting. You know, there's something about it visually that makes you want to know more. Like I'm so ignorant about this painting or this sculpture, um, but it looks super interesting and I want to know more. And then you start to learn more about it and you're like, wow, this is like off the charts amazing. Like what they're saying here is fantastic, right? A really good example of that is the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. Oh, amazing. I mean, there's I believe the artist, she was Vietnamese as well. I think so. I'm not sure on that. But I mean, that's a piece of artwork that says so much. So much. And I think a lot of sculptures like that, where they're dealing with very difficult, complex emotions with political stuff, right? Which I don't want to get into, not at all. This is not the stream for it. But the artwork there is amazing. Like I love the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C. I'm not sure why those are coming up for me as far as things that have like a visual impact, but actually that's not very abstract. It's sculptures of figures in the woods, you know, dark and rainy and wet, and you really get you know, just an amazing feeling about that. But these ones that, you know, don't spell out everything for you, but have enough interest in them so that you want to know more. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of some other artists that I've looked at that are very abstract and not representational, but I want to know more. Oh, Basquiat. There we go. Jean-Michel Basquiat. Jean-Michel Basquiat. I love his paintings. I love his work. I love everything he does. Um, and that's an artist where I look at their work and it's just, you know, words and harsh imagery everywhere, stuff everywhere. And for me, it just draws me in. And I'm like, oh, I need to know more about what's going on here. I must know more. I think that's really interesting. There's also been artwork, like abstract works, where it's a little too sharp there. Let's soften all this up. It's attracting too much attention. There also been artwork. There's this one piece that has been in the prominent collection for the Seattle Art Museum for years and years and years. And it's like a checkerboard, a really big checkerboard in gray on the floor. And it's flat, just like a checkerboard. There's no, or like, and it's not even a full checkerboard. It's like maybe 9 squares or something, right? And it's just there on the floor. They put stanchions around it because you would walk over it because it's so innocuous, right? And I look at that and I remember looking at it multiple times, and I just pass it up. I'm like, I have no need or want to understand what's going on there. It doesn't draw me in. Sorry, whoever was the artist of that. You're probably saying something profound with that work, I'm sure. But no, I'm not there. Nope. Can't feel it. There was a work of art, and I don't know the artist or the name of the work. I'm just going to describe it. Uh, that I've seen in art history books when I was in college and stuff. And it's imagine like a floor length coat, greater than life size. Like it's just a coat. Okay. So if like someone suspended a coat without a person in it, open and everything, about 10 feet tall, and the trail of the coat, the train of it, goes out about 20 or 30 feet around it. So we got this coat in the very center, and then all around the coat is its train in a big circular motion, except for the front. The front is open. My computer beeped for some reason. The computer or the the coat is open in the front, and that openness extends further as well out into that huge circle. And it's shiny. It's made out of some type of metal, and you're like, whoa. I mean, it has a presence to it that is just absolutely amazing. Like it commands you to look at it. It's shiny. It's lit from above, like in a, almost like a holy light is kind of coming down on top of this coat, this huge train, and you get closer and closer to it. And it's made out of nothing but dog tags from people that have been in wars. The tags where they come in two pieces and they break off one other piece when that soldier has died, to keep track of, where they were and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was moving, like so moving. Probably one of the most moving pieces I've ever seen in person was that. I wish I knew what that was called. I hopefully describing it, you guys are thinking about it and going, I know that, because if you've done any art history, I think it's, pretty big in art history. And it's interesting how some of those moving pieces go back to, wars and things for me. Not sure why. I am a pacifist in the ultimate sense. So maybe that's it. Trying to think of some other paintings that were not representational but moving. You see this fold here, this fold, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that, makes me want to puke a little bit. That thing. Like here we have structure. We have, we can feel the thinness of that fold. I feel how thin that is. I feel like it kind of goes up and does this thing and has more structure. This is trying to be structure, but it's almost like I've rolled up some dough, and it just kind of falls. It looks like dough. It doesn't look like a fold. Why is that? Why is that? Value and edges, really. Like let me go back to it again. There's a sharp edge. If you look at the reference, there's a sharp edge that happens. I'm going to outline it. Boom. Bam. Now to get rid of these lines. Kind of meanders off up there. Yeah. Top, side, bottom. There's a little bit of reflected light in there, but it's a turn. It's a quick turn. Anytime we look at shadow shapes, okay, anytime we're looking at a form, it's telling us everything we need to know. Here's an example. If the edge between, on a form, on an object, is really sharp like that, like we have the light side and the dark side, it's like a table edge, right? It's all of a sudden it goes from light to dark. It's a sharp, sharp, sharp edge. That fold that I was just looking at right here is less than that. A little bit less, right? It softens out a little bit. So we got, it folds down a little bit. It's a quick fold. Okay. And then we have something like, your forearm or your thigh or something like that, where this gets so faded out that there's barely even a transition between the two. And it becomes this very soft edge, the transition from, the eye socket onto the cheek. Here you go, right onto my head. You have highlight into shadow over here. Yeah. The best thing is looking at our own bodies, right? So you got this kind of soft transition over here and then harsh. I got this big Cro-Magnon dome where, skull just transitions right to the back right there. And it gets sharp right there. But this transition here is soft. See that soft transition? We have to see those things. See it here? Highlight down into forehead, right? Or what do you call that? My brain. Oh, please. Yeah. Anyway, that transition, it'll come to me. So highlight down into there. It's a bit softer, somewhat sharp in that highlight. Look at this big nose that I have, right? The transition on this side versus that side into shadow. Love those softer transitions. I was talking about, this fantastic triangle that we get over here. Let me see if I can get the Rembrandt triangle. There you go. This is kind of fun. If you look at my screen, look at me on the screen, you see this like kind of light here. It's a little faded, right? And it makes this kind of triangle shape that goes up into there. Bam, bam. That's the Rembrandt triangle. You start look at Rembrandt paintings, you will see that everywhere. And it's like this 3/4 kind of light thing that creates that little triangle there. But the softness within that cheek that happens, this is telling us about how the form moves through space, depending on how sharp or how soft the transition between light and dark will give us an understanding of that object. It's our way of deciphering the world around us as artists, which is beautiful. So beautiful, right? Now, I don't want to make this too light because I don't want it to take interest away from everything else or anything else, really. But I want to lighten this up a bit and sharpen up that edge, except for there. Soften it out there. Like how it softens out, but give it this idea that we have a definite top and a definite side or bottom within that fold. In a more general way, there's, if you look at the reference within that fold, there's a million little bumps and like dark and light, and there's a ton of things there that are happening. We have highlight, or not highlights, but we have light, we have reflected light, we got half tones everywhere, we got all kinds of stuff everywhere on this little fold. But I am not going to describe all that. I don't need to describe all that. I don't want to describe all that. That's the more important thing. And then I'm going to darken this up. I just put my lighter color right into there. Now I got to darken it up again. I want to grab a bit of that terminator that's here that will separate the light side from the dark side and the reflected light that is in that shadow side of the form. It's interesting we're dealing with nothing but form shadows here and not hardly any cast shadows whatsoever on this fabric. Now, that looks better. It has more structure to it. It isn't so blobby. It's not quite there. Still not quite there. But it doesn't look like dough. Brow, thank you. 50 years old. Be 51 in July. If I keep doing these streams for the next 10 years, 10 years from now, it's just going to be a potato on a stream. with a paintbrush, and that's it. That's all you're going to get. You're like, oh yeah, that's that awesome stream. There's like 10 million people following it. It's just, some guy that looks like a potato and makes grunting noises as he paints. But his paintings are beautiful, We have no idea what he says anymore, but the paintings are great. Yep, that's going to be me. Going to be me. Okay. So this looks better, but still not there. I'm balancing or kind of tap dancing on that line of too much information down here. Want to have enough so it doesn't look like a bunch of dough that I folded up, but just enough to get away from that and describe what it is, but not too much that it attracts a bunch of attention. Yeah, I need to soften it a bit more. Where's my softener brush? There it is. You gotta have a softener brush. It's pretty easy to come across them. You just keep painting, and then eventually your brushes are so splayed out, or certain ones are so splayed out that they become nothing but a brush to soften edges. It's wonderful. New life into old brushes. Not too bad, but I want something different here. I want, let's try it with this. No, that's too big. A small, bright. If I can pull off enough paint here, just a little bit of paint to glow this a little bit more, I think it'll help. Just a tiny indication that, hey, it's grabbing a bit more light there. Man, I got to tell you guys, yeah, if you're not trying this, you got to try this. If you're not painting like this or haven't painted on a non-absorbent surface so you can pull the paint off and see that kind of glow where the white shows through or whatever shows through, like it could be like if you had a burnt umber underneath or something like that, like if you're doing a landscape and you get those little kind of highlights of a little bit of that burnt umber showing through. There's nothing like it. I mean, if I tried to do that with just titanium white and this color, it wouldn't look anywhere near it. And you can affect it in very subtle ways, just little small changes, like just swipe with the brush and then dab it to make it a little softer. And there you go. There you go. Beautiful. And this little bit here that's kind of showing through. It's interesting how wet this still is. Now it's making me see, even up here, look at this. Oh no. Is this going to dry? Now I'm worried about if this is going to dry correctly or not. I haven't done anything differently on this that I have done from my past few paintings. This is 140-pound watercolor paper with 2 coats of PVA size on it. All the other paintings have dried perfectly, but this one is staying wet for a lot longer, and it's hot here, okay? Usually heat will dry things a lot faster. And I have a fan on me throughout the day too that's hitting this painting somewhat. So now I'm worried about the painting drying. Okay. Oh, good job, Chris. Just totally elbowed that thing. I'm over 2 hours in. This is my point in my daily art where I know if I go over this, I'll begin to kind of burn out. My sustainable amount of time, maximum, I have a minimum and a maximum now. 1.5 to 2 hours a day, I can sustain, right? Actually, when I'm on these streams, I think I could sustain more. Don't really like that now, that little bit. It's too distracting, a little bit off. But this, all down here, looks a lot better. Still don't like that. Not liking where that's at. I'll have to come. It's soft enough, I think, where I can come back into it tomorrow and figure it out. maybe a little softer. I turned it more into, a fold of dough again, but I wanted to soften that out before tomorrow. Like this really sharp edge on that arm there, I want to soften that as well. These sharp edges, especially when it's like a dark against the light where it's a sharp edge plus high contrast. Ooh, I'm pulling paint up too. My goodness. This was 2 coats of PVA size. I think I'm going to go back to 1 coat of PVA size. It's nice to be able to go back, all the way to the white. But when you're just trying to move paint around and you start pulling up paint from the darker areas, that gets too fiddly to mess with. It's the biggest complaint that I had with Yupo paper was that aspect of it. It was so fiddly in the shadow areas that you would touch them and lift paint off. It was not good. The indirect approach, doing like a burnt umber wash, like grisaille first and then painting over that worked really well though, because you darkened up your shadow areas and you prepared for that kind of effect. I think what I will do as I'm here, I might move a little bit beyond my darkest dark in a couple areas. I like possibly doing the parentheses around my focal point, this darker area, and then repeating that in this hair. So it's constraining that in. But I also like a lot of the subtle texture that's happening within this hair that I don't want to get rid of. So darkening it just enough. Of course, I say that like I need to finish. I'm done for the day. And here I am seeing a bunch of things that I want to do. It's, the days like this, the weeks and months where you're just so interested in painting, grab it. Don't let it go, because you'll have that time frame and then it'll leave you, life comes in with a bunch of stuff going on or whatever. And then you get less motivated. You're like, I really don't feel like painting. And that can go on for months. So the time that you have when you're really interested in it, you don't want to put down a brush, grab it, hang on to it within reason. Don't burn out, And this has been me lately, the past week and a half. As soon as I started this stream, I started feeling it. Been getting a lot of good sleep. That's been helping. Yeah, the parentheses around that helped a lot. A little bit darker up in there. I can bring it up a bit further. Kind of like this little bit of light there, but doesn't work. Love the work you did on the shirt hanging off the shoulder today. It looks fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I like it too. Happy with that. I've done a lot of folds from this same image bank or that I bought from Satine Zilla. Did a lot of their folds. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. It's a lot of fun. Do they look exactly like the folds that are there? No. And that's the fun part about it, is like just getting some ideas of those folds. It's like trees in a lot of ways. There's certain things that you can paint that that you don't need to be exact on. Like, that tree doesn't need to look exactly like the tree I'm painting. People will know that it's just a tree, and that's all you need to do, right? A grouping of leaves could be described in a million different ways and still look like a grouping of leaves. Alternate to that would be something like a hand or a face. I mean, you got to be really exact on that. But I think folds are around that area where it doesn't have to be too exact. And maybe like in between. It can't be as um nebulous, or it's not as readily available with interpretation as trees, I think. But there is a lot of interpretation that can happen there. And that's another thing I was talking about at the beginning of the stream. I want to, like, this part of the hair was annoying me. I think it was the lighter area on that. It's not looking so good. Oof, too sharp, too sharp. And then lighten it up even more for that forehead that is going up a bit further into the hair there. Oof, I touched too much red. Here's how you know when you're painting enough and you're starting to really understand color and paint itself, and how the particular paint that you're working with, how you know that you're like really progressing, is when you dip into your brush into a particular color and you know right away, either from the weight or from how much is on the tip of your brush and what the pile of other paint you're going to put into it, right away it's too much. You know that you picked up a bit too much of that cadmium red. It's going to destroy your mixture right away. Once you start like feeling that, it's like, oh, okay, this is another level that I just realized is possible. And the funny thing about it, I thought it's something I didn't think about like specifically. It was like, oh, I do this. I wonder, whatever. And I remember watching Nicholas Uribe paint, who's such a better painter than me. And I saw him doing the same thing. He'd pick up too much red and then just throw it over here on the side of the palette real quick, like poof, like get off my brush. That's too much. And then mix what was left. Okay, looking pretty good. This is terrible. Don't like that. See all these little tiny highlights that are happening in this hand? I might keep those. Something about those. I don't want to touch them. Not in the shadow area. Like these highlights need to change. Like that's too bright, right? It's definitely too bright. It looks brighter on the image than it does in the actual painting, by the way. Yeah. I still got some work on it as I'm sitting here staring at it. Okay. I'm good for the day. This is good. Made some good progress on it. Check out my website, chrisbevan.com, if you want to buy the paintings that I have, right? If you want to support me beyond like liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel. You can also go and sign up for my newsletter, which I do very infrequently, maybe once or twice a month on that, to just update everybody on the paintings that I've finished that are ready for sale and things like that. And as soon as the Painter's Path is out, that'll be on there. So if you want to support me in a monetary way, which would be great and fantastic, you can do that too. I mean, besides buying paintings, obviously. So, but I appreciate everybody that's here asking questions and joining me along this journey, this daily art journey. I thoroughly appreciate it. You make this time of my day so interesting and fun. So have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.